Welcome back, guys, to yet another World of Warcraft video for the War Within. Today we are going to be talking about enchanting and also tailoring for a concentration setup. Now, the reason that I've decided to talk about these two professions in particular is because I have set these up on a lot of characters now, and I also want to talk about what I use each profession for, but also kind of what my reasoning is for the levels that I stop at, how I collect it, how much I spend on it, and everything like that. But before we do get into the video, make sure that you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel with all the notifications on because it helps out the algorithm and all that jazz. And also make sure that you check out Goldcapped in the description below, probably also in a pinned comment. It's a great place to be. Lots of gold guides for every version of World of Warcraft that you could be interested in. But now that I've said all that, we can get straight into the video, okay? So the first thing that you will do is you need a level 70. You can technically pick up professions at level 68, but as you venture out into the world, because you're going to have to do that, as I'll be talking about here in a second, you have to be level 70 or above. If you're not level 70 or above, you're going to have a terrible time with a lot of the stuff that you need to do. Also, if you ever plan on using this for anything in the future, it just sucks. Also, because you get first-time craft bonuses for experience, you don't really want to be wasting that on level 68, 70. You might as well just use that from level 70 to get the proper scaling and everything like that, because you require way more experience at those levels. But anyway, just start at level 70. You can do concentration builds at level 70. You do not need to be level 80. Maybe in the future for major patches and stuff like that, we might actually need level 80, maybe for some currencies, maybe for some particular vendor in new zones. But right now, you do not need any more than level 70. The first thing that I do on an alt is I pick up enchanting, okay? Now, as pre-work, I also buy every single material that I could possibly need for this purpose. I do not have an exact list of exactly how much you need because it kind of varies depending on the enchant that you want to go for. Also, if you decide to bring along tailoring, that might change up what you actually want or need. Now, the materials that I buy, if you look into enchanting, if you've never done it ever before, what you will need generally is you'll need gleaming shards, you'll need refulgent crystals, and you will need storm dust. Those are the main things you need while leveling up. Another part of leveling up is that you will be crafting gleeful glamours, which means you'll be needing leyline residue, you'll be needing viridescent spores, and again, storm dust. So those are some of the materials you need. You also need some outliers, and it kind of depends again on whether you stop at level 60, like I will be talking about later, or you take it all the way to 100. This is completely up to you. And the reason why I don't have an exact list of how many materials you need is because the way that I do this is I always know that, oh, if I buy a little bit too many materials, I'll be using this for the next alt anyway, or I'll be using it for when I actually do my concentration crafting, either on Wednesdays or Saturdays. So that's kind of like my way of thinking. But again, if you see the follow through rather on the way that I would level these two professions, then you'll see what you need. Now that's just for enchanting. When it actually comes to tailoring, that's even easier. You just need the two vendor materials. I'll just show you right here in Dornogal. You need Mosswool thread, and then you need adorning ribbon. The only other thing you will need is storm dust. Again, you already have that. You'll need exquisite weavercloth bolts, and then you will need regular weavercloth bolts. And that's pretty much it. You need a little bit of regular weavercloth to do some unraveling, but you can get that out of a particular quest that you will be able to get over here. Now, in here is the Artisans Consortium, which is very easy to find in Dornogal. You can see the location on my map right here. You'll walk in, and right here you'll find this quest. If you've never done this before in your alt, you'll get this quest with some material bags you can pick and choose from. The one that I usually choose is the tailoring one, just because that's the one that makes most sense for the way that I set it up. If you would rather want the ore, the leatherworking, or enchanting materials, depending on the professions that you go for, you should just pick that. Now, out of the tailoring one, you can see you also get some storm dust, you get some writhing samples, and some leyline residue alongside the weavercloth, which is nice to see. And then obviously we get our 350 artisans acuity. We'll be talking more about that later. Now, after I've done this, this is mostly what I would think of. You know, you have access to your materials, you have your professions collected, and you might have noticed that I have only picked up enchanting. Now, something that I've recently been testing out and also kind of biting into is that it is easier to get your specifically enchanting weekly treasures if you only have enchanting. Now, if I were to pick up tailoring, the chances are this could take 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour. But with only enchanting, we have actually been able to do this on the last 15 tunes. I've been able to get my enchanting treasures in under 8 minutes every single time. And I'll be able to show this to you guys again on this particular tune. Now, you might be wondering, why am I getting the 2 weekly enchanting treasures? Because why does that matter? Well, for enchanting, you have Shimmering Dust. And Shimmering Dust is a catch-up knowledge point item that you will be able to get from disenchanting. Now, since you can get that from disenchanting, you could obviously think, okay, well, I'm just going to get some Darkmoon decks, I'm just going to get some blue items, and I'm going to start disenchanting and I'll get them. No, if you have not gotten your 2 weekly treasures from either Disturbed Earth out in the world, or random treasures in every single zone, then you will not be able to get your Shimmering Dust, okay? You will be able to get the first 9 points that are regular for enchanting, but Shimmering Dust you will not be able to get. It just does not work. And this also means that right now it doesn't matter, because right now you can get 157 points of Shimmering Dust, and you realistically only need 160 points for a good build in enchanting for concentration. So it doesn't really matter if it increases a lot. Usually it increases by 14 points a week, but in the future, if it increases anymore, it's not points that you are going to be actively needing. So it's not that big of a deal if it's more in the future, but you want to be able to get them. And again, there's a lot of different zones, a lot of different areas that you can actually decide, hey, I want to go and get these treasures. Where is the best location for it? Well, there's a couple different options for what you can do. I recently have just been doing Isle of Dorn because it's very, very close to Dornagol, and you can get back and forth really quickly. Now, there is usually a lot more competition, so it's not always easy for you to find these treasures, the Disturbed Earth, or random treasures. Random treasures are more likely for you to find down in the Ringing Deeps or Hellowfall, or even in Ashkahet's. Whichever zone that you prefer is where you should go, whatever makes sense for you. But in the grand scheme of things, it all comes down to RNG anyway, so no matter where you actually end up going, it doesn't actually matter that much because you just need to get lucky anyway. Now, the other thing I do want to add is, as you can see, these Disturbed Earth, they don't show up on my minimap, but they do show up on the ground here with a purple outline. Now, if this does not show up on your particular screen, that is because when you go into your graphical settings, if you go into options under your interface, you go into graphics, in here you will find something that says outline mode. Now, this particular setting will give something like Disturbed Earth and many other items in the game a outline. And the outline on Disturbed Earth particularly, which is how you collect wax, but they're also technically treasures, they will give it a purple outline, which means when you're flying around and you can see that, that's very, very easy to spot. Something that makes it a little bit easier if you want to is also an Inky Black Potion, because that changes the world to night and like a deep night, so it'll be extra dark, which means spotting a purple outline will be even easier. Now, this particular rotation that I'm doing is not, you don't really have to go here. It's just the way that I've been doing it recently. Usually there's a lot of treasures here, but again, it depends on the time of day that you try, and also how much competition is on the phase that you are on. It varies a lot, so that's kind of why we're flying around more than usual here. But I'll stop yapping for a little bit, and I'll see if I can get these treasures. I'll probably speed the video up from here so you guys can see the whole process, and then we will go back to Dornagol and you will see the next steps. So now we have both of our enchanting treasures. As you can see, it actually took 9 minutes on this particular tune, but if you were watching that whole sped up section, you could see that I was running away from a lot of the different events that those spawned. They were actually really, really unlucky because some of the mobs, they're way too strong, especially if you have a tune that's only 324 eye level. Don't worry about it. If you want yourself to have a little bit of an easier time, you want to be at like 400 eye level or above, but still 9 minutes, it's not bad considering how bad our luck was there and how many treasures that we actually walked away from because they're either annoying events or the mobs are too strong and they will just take too long to kill. But now that we have these two treasures, we are now able to get Shimmering Dust, and I'll be able to show you guys this right when we get back here to Dornagal. The other thing that we are going to do is we will be picking up Tailoring as well. Now, this next step is something that you can either be self-sufficient with or you can buy it from other people on your server. Now, to start out, depending on how hard you want to go on these alts, I am doing what I would call a minimum build for concentration, at least for enchanting. When it actually comes to tailoring, it's a little less intensive these days, but it is profession tools. Now, I'm actually making my own ruined bismuth rods with ingenuity on them, and you want ingenuity because that's the best stat when it comes to concentration crafting, at least in enchanting, because there's no multi-crafting with enchants, so that's just something to keep in mind. But the other thing when it comes to something like tailoring is if you're doing either Duskweave bolts or if you're doing Spellthread, which are two very good options, then multi-crafting would be a pretty good option. For me, right now, I'm most likely just going to get a multi-crafting tool, but there's also the option of getting a resourcefulness tool if you just plan on doing NPC work orders. That is something that's really important to think about. Now, the other thing is you obviously want your accessories as well. Depending on the prices on your realms, you might want to craft them yourself, and if you can't craft them yourself, then you have the opportunity of going to another realm using your warp bank, taking things in and out, and that should be very, very quick. But again, this is just to get some starting gear and make our process a little better, get some more profession stats, and just have something on these tunes that is awesome. Now, another thing that I also do for these tunes to get them started is I get them ranked to enchants. Now, these particular enchants are going to be, where are they? Right here. They're going to be Ingenuity. Now, for enchanting, it will be Ingenuity because we're already doing Ingenuity. We want more. And for tailoring, we are going to do resourcefulness. And I will do that anytime just because multi-crafting is awesome. But oh, I accidentally put ingenuity on this one as well. That's fine. But here's the thing about resourcefulness. In tailoring, and I'll show you because we're going to start with tailoring. When you start with tailoring, you can follow the exact same leveling process as I do, or you can follow, many of the guys that exist for tailoring currently if you want to. But if you follow along for what I do, it is pretty close to what you can call the cheapest way of leveling. You also need a couple of spools, which you obviously get through unraveling, so that's no big deal. What I usually do is I go through this and do the first time crafts, and then whenever I need to reach a breakpoint for leveling in the profession, I just craft a couple of these gear pieces. It's actually very, very, very simple to level this up. Now, recently, I actually haven't been pushing tailoring super far, and I'll talk a little bit about why, and then you can consider how far you want to push tailoring yourself, or if you want to do another profession. If you want to do another profession, then that is something that will be for another video. But again, this video right here is going to be for tailoring and enchanting from my perspective. So as you can see, I'm doing all the first time crafts, and the way that I do that is there's a little filter option up here, and you'll be able to click on first craft bonuses. The Blizzard UI will actually show you all the things you have a first time craft on. This will give you a knowledge point every single time you craft, which is awesome. Obviously you want that because we need those for making the profession better. So you want to do that to make sure that you get everything. Now, as soon as we get up to around this level, which is pretty much 50, we have to make a choice. Either you say, okay, well, I'm going to push my profession further in and get some more progress out of it. then you have a couple of options. If you're going for dusk weave bolts, which is a good option for using concentration, you would be going into quality fabrics here, and you'd be getting some quality fabrics. You'd be getting some weaving and unraveling, 30 points in this, 30 points into that. And then you would also be going into from dawn until dusk, and then you would be going either into dusk weave tailoring, the dusk weave way, or the dawn weave way. Most of the time, I would say dusk weave performs a little better. Here's the thing though. The profit margins when it comes to dusk weave and also spell threads, which you can find in here under quality fabrics, are not great. Okay, they're not super awesome at the moment. Tailoring is not in a great spot when it comes to that, even with concentration. So what I am doing currently is I'm just starting out with textile treasures. Now, the reason that I want to do that is because in extra threads, I can increase my resourcefulness by a ton. So that's where I will be putting my points to start out. Normally, if I was doing a completely normal build, I would be starting with quality fabrics and from dawn until dusk. And then I would either be starting with the dusk weave bolt angle, or I would be going for the sunset spell threads. Now, those are two very good options, and I actually believe if you're preparing for season 2, or if you're watching this in season 2, that they're going to be in a great spot again. Right now, at the time of making this video, they're not particularly awesome, and it would probably be better for you to spend your time elsewhere or just focusing primarily on the NPC work orders. I would say that this is an incredibly cheap option because you can get to a very good point, and then you'll be able to do NPC work orders, twice a week or even just once a week to get yourself a couple thousand gold all out of an alt if you don't want to put, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70k into an alt. Which reminds me again, when it comes to enchanting, I know I talked about I don't have an exact list of materials when it actually comes to what you use when you level. However, it on average has cost me about 30 or 40k. Now that number will change whether you play on EU or NA or another region, and it will also change depending on the enchant that you will go for. And I'll talk more about the possibilities for enchants and what you can kind of do as soon as we get over to enchanting. Now, in tailoring, you can see that there's a lot of different options for NPC work orders here. All the ones that are completely free, I mean, you should do those every single time. Now, for the other ones, I would say that these payouts are probably worth maybe like 100 to 150 gold now. You could push it maybe and say 200. So if you can make it for less than that, you have a chance to get even more out of it because you can get some really good materials out of these. You get probably 1, 2, 3 materials, null stones, null lotus, whatever else. You can find a bunch of stuff in here, and they're actually pretty nice. And alongside, you'll also get some artisan security, which you can use for 600 artisan security bags, material bags, or you can use it towards the fund that you need for profession tools, like blue profession tools eventually. Now, I'll just leave this here so we can get to working on specifically for enchanting. Now, when it comes to enchanting, the first thing that you kind of want to do is you make yourself a macro to make this a lot easier. It's very simple. The best thing you can do when it comes to disenchanting, especially getting your shimmering dust, is your lowest chance to get shimmering dust from a disenchant is green items. For blue items, it's about a 50% chance, but if you disenchant Darkmoon decks, as you can see, I have a lot of cards here. If you disenchant Darkmoon decks, you have a 100% chance to get shimmering dust, which means you need, right now, since I said earlier, 157 shimmering dust. That's how many you can get, which means you need 157 Darkmoon decks. Then you'll be in a prime time position. Now, the best way to get yourself Darkmoon decks is, obviously maybe you can find them cheap on the auction house individually, but the easiest way to mass produce them is buying the 8 individual pieces of a particular deck, right? So the one I have in my inventory right now is Vivacity. The other one could be Symbiosis. That one is also usually cheap. And the easiest way to actually buy something like that is if you have, TSM, or if you have Auctioneer, it'll be easy. But you could also just type off Vivacity, because then you will get 2, 5, 7, like the whole 8. You'll get all of it. And then you can just buy each individual piece, however many you need. If you just want to get 157, then you can do that. If you want to get more because you're going to set up more alts, then you can do that as well. Now, something that's really important, and I'll show you guys right here before we speed it up again so you guys can see how long this takes, because it does take a little bit to get through all this and chance to get all the catch-up points. We want to get through what is the early leveling for enchanting, because you get a couple of levels as you disenchant early on. When you get to level 7, skill level 7 in enchanting, and you also have 3 of the green profession tools, you will actually be at a point where the weekly quest for enchanting will show up. And as you can see, it shows up right here. We are now skill level 7, which is awesome. And then you can see we just do one of these. The reason why you want to do this quest right when you start is because, I'll show you right now, if you disenchant Darkmoon decks across this point, because now that you've gotten your 9 points, which is this one that gives 4, and these 5 times 1 is 9 total, that's the normal 9 weekly points that you get. You cannot get Shimmering Dust, right? I'll disenchant a couple more decks so I can show you. This is including getting the 2 treasures, by the way, so make sure you don't forget those. When you turn this quest in, I'll show you right here. Now when we disenchant these decks, as you can see, Shimmering Dust is now appearing. And this will, every single Darkmoon deck, as I talked about, will give you a 100% chance to get Shimmering Dust. So at this point, you're just disenchanting 157 Darkmoon decks, and then you can get your points. Now, because this is obviously a video, and I want to tell you guys how you can work around this, I will actually just log over to one of my other tunes, so you can actually see how this looks, so we don't have to spend time on it in this video. Just because it's a little bit easier, and I've set this up a million times, so just to show you guys instantly, and I can work on that on my own time. Now, when it comes to choices for the kind of enchants that you want to do, there's a lot of different options for what you can go for, and I have many, many options, okay? And I'll give you guys a look into how you can figure some of that out yourself. Now, for this particular tune, I went for Radiant Power. Now, a 40 of Radiant Power, if you ever want to figure out, okay, what build do I do for this enchant, or how do I build for, you know, a 40 of Fiery Resolve, or how do I build for Defender's March, or how do I build for Council's Intellect? A great add-on that can help with something like that is going to be Craft Sim. And in Craft Sim, and I'll just show you guys right here, when you look, you click on any particular enchant that you want to know something about, for a build anyway, you'll click on Craft Sim when you have that installed as an add-on. You click on specialization info, and right here you'll get a little info box that will tell you, hey, these are all the profession tree talents that will impact this particular recipe, this particular formula. I can't speak for some reason. So you just go into your specialization trees and you fill out the ones that it says, and then you have a pretty much close to perfected setup. The only other thing you could do is level your profession all the way to 100, but depending on how much gold you have, depending on how far you want to push a particular alt into the negatives right before you start making gold, that's completely up to you. If you also want to add blue profession tools, and for enchanting you can actually get an epic rod, you can get that as well, which is super awesome. It's super worth it, but it will mean that your alts are going to be more expensive to get started. So that's just a personal decision for, you know, what you want to do. At this point, you can start making gold. So if you're wondering, oh, do I need to do all that to be able to make gold? No. But your profit margins will be much smaller than somebody that has a 100%, you know, 110% min-maxed setup. So just remember that. Now, the other thing that you need to do when you're looking at something like this, and I can tell you this, when you're at this point, when you get to 60 in enchanting, obviously you can see this one is 7 in enchanting, but that's because I've already used a concentration on this alt. But when you get to 60 in enchanting, no matter what enchant you go for, when you have 70 points in everlasting enchantments, you will be able to use rank 2 materials for your enchants plus concentration, and then that's what you want to do. That is the cheapest way to do it. If you think, okay, well, maybe I can get some of the rank 1 materials a little bit cheaper, well, if you decide to do that, then the amount of concentration that you use will increase exponentially. Okay, so you can see I'll just add 13 here, and you can see that increases by quite a lot. Say I'll change the Gleaming Shards to rank 1s instead, then you see 339. So there's a really big difference. You can also see if I use Refulgent Crystals, 374. But if I go ahead and say I want to use the best quality reagents, which is just rank 2s in this case, 271. And for base calculations based on the differences for enchanting materials particularly, you want to use rank 2 materials every single time, okay? That is the best thing that you can do. Now, to make this process even better, what you want to get is you want to get forged frameworks. You can also go for concentration concentrate. On average, I would say forged frameworks are better. They even make you more gold if you can produce these yourself at a top level. So again, go on the auction house. Whichever one is cheaper is probably the one you want to go for, and rank 2s are super worth it. You could also be cheap and go for only the rank 1s, but rank 2s are definitely worth it. The rank 3s are not worth it to use for concentration, so that's important to keep as a reminder. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you have a couple of options when you set up an alt. You can get one, which is aerated file of quick hands, which will increase your crafting speed by 30%, which is awesome when you're setting up an alt and how much you have to craft. The other thing is a file of concentrated ingenuity. Now, the one you're looking at here, that is just a rank 1. You could actually get a rank 2 or a rank 3 because this only counts down when you're logged into the toon. So if you activate this right when your alt is done and right when you've used your concentration, well, then this will just stop. So let's say it has a normal 30-minute timer. You log out, you've spent 2 minutes, right? So it's not going to count down from 28 until you log back in again. So you can get a lot of uses out of the extra percentage difference that this will actually give you. So those are super worth it to get. Even at rank 2, they're worth it to get. If you really min-max it, I would say that probably even rank 3s are worth it. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your crafting. Now, as for picking what kind of enchants that you want to do, the way that I always do it, and I'll actually have to, I don't think that this particular toon, it doesn't have TSM enabled, but the way that I've picked every single one of my enchants is I go onto the auction house, and we'll talk a little bit about profit margins, we'll talk a little bit about sell rates, and then we'll talk a little bit about diversification here, okay? So what you want to do is, well, at least the way that I have done it, is I just type enchant into the auction house, I click on filters, then current expansion only, and then search. Now what I do here is I just say, okay, well, I want the top price stuff, and then I look into it. So a couple different information pieces that TSM will give you, and I know this is not the prime time because this is a different account for TSM, it's reloading, but again, what you want to look at is you want to look at the market values, and you want to look at the historical data, and then you want to look at the region average daily sold. Now, once you find what you like in those particular stats, well, then you're at a point where you can say, okay, well, what's the crafting cost? So if we take into perspective the one that we have on this particular toon, which is a 40 of radiant power, you can see that that currently sells for 6,710 gold at a quality 3. So that is if we were to use concentration, then that is where we would be at. Now you can see for the refulgent crystals, the gleaming shards, and the storm dust, they're all rank 2s. So just to go through it with it here, these are 67 gold times 2. I'll type this into a calculator on the side just to give you guys an idea. You can follow along. So right now we're at 134 gold. And we also need 10 gleaming shards at quality 2, which we can see is 53.24. So we'll just call this we'll call it exactly what it is. We'll type this in times 10. That adds another 532.4 to our little calculation. Now, additionally, we have storm dust at rank 2 is currently, we'll just call that 21 gold, and we need 75 of those, which is a little bit higher. And that's another 1,575 gold to our crafting cost. And then we have tinderboxes. Tinderboxes are currently 1870, so we'll add that on top. So right now we are looking at a craft cost plus concentration, and if you were to add a forged framework on top, let's just say that we do that, then that costs an extra 120 gold. We'll just add that on top. 4,231. So when you look at your radiant power, that is currently 6,700 gold. If we remove the auction house cut, which would just be 6,700 times 0.95, then we are looking at 6,365, which means on average, with no procs, no resourcefulness, no ingenuity, whatever, like no procs at all, we are looking at about a 2,100 gold profit per craft currently. Okay, with the current prices that I'm looking at, you're looking at about 2,100 gold profit, which is awesome, right? Because then when you count in your resourcefulness, and then obviously because of how many times you can only, obviously concentration is very limited. So in this particular case, you wouldn't be able to craft more than 3 or 4. Now, if you proc Ingenuity, because of the shattering buff that you can get, and I actually forgot to mention that, you have to make sure, the reason why you want supplementary shattering is because this particular talent will decrease how much concentration that you use, and it will also increase how much you get out of the buff supplementary shattering. And you want resourcefulness, residue, and ingenuity because this makes resourcefulness better and this makes ingenuity better. The reason why you want 30 points in here in particular is when you proc an ingenious breakthrough with ingenuity, you get refunded 100%. And something that's really important, which is really unfortunate, if Blizzard's listening to this video, please fix this. Every single time that you log into your ult, you can see when I pop this Shatter Essence, it'll give me 165 of each of the stats, resourcefulness, ingenuity, and it would also be multi-crafting, but considering multi-crafting does not work on enchants, there's no reason to get it. So again, there's no points putting points into multi-crafting when you can't really use it for anything. But this particular buff works perfectly when you activate it. But if you log out of the character and you log back into it again, this buff will be diminished and not have the same amount of stats, which is really, 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 really unfortunate. So make sure that every time you log into your ult, whether that's 2 times a week, once a week, every couple of days, whatever it is, make sure that you reapply this buff. The absolute cheapest material that you can use for this, you can see that you can use iridescent spores, leyline residue, writhing samples, and crystalline powder. Crystalline powder is beyond the cheapest thing. It's literally usually a gold or 2 at most, okay? So make sure that you use that for that particular purpose before you do any kind of crafting. But again, that was to give you guys an idea to how to find any of your enchants. Now, the enchants that I currently make, just to give you guys a list, would be a 40 of Radiant Power, a 40 of Fiery Resolve. That is the same exact build of Radiant Power. And I'll also show you. If you look at the crafting cost on these two, it's the exact same. The difference between Radiant Power and Fiery Resolve is that Fiery Resolve is something that you learn straight out of the spec tree. But Radiant Power, considering the reasoning for it being more expensive is because you have to purchase this off the auction house. This particular recipe has gotten a lot cheaper, but you can see this would cost you right now on my realm. Obviously, there's lots of different prices across the realms, and because of cross-realm trading and war banks, you can move on any realm and buy it anywhere. But again, this would put you 21k deeper in the hole, so it takes longer for one character to make the gold back that you spent on leveling it. So just keep that in mind when you're picking and choosing what you actually want to craft, okay? There's just a side piece of information based on how much you can actually start with. But again, you can see that Radiant Power, in that case, for the same build, is a lot better than Fiery Resolve because of the profit margin being a lot higher. But it also starts deeper in the hole. But region average daily sold is 190. Obviously amazing. When it comes to a 40 of Fire Resolve, this one also sells great, but considering that it's so easy to get because you get it straight out of the profession talents, it's not, the profit margins are not absolutely amazing on it. Now, another one that's really awesome is a 40 of the Depths. Now, a 40 of the Depths has an amazing sell rate, and the profit margins are also pretty nice. And again, as I told you before, you literally just want to manually look it up. You can use CraftSim for these calculations. You can also use Auctionator to just do shopping lists and tell you how much it's going to cost to craft. Again, however you want to do the calculation for whatever it is, for whatever enchant that you want to do, that is completely up to you. However, I will say for every single enchant that I've chosen so far, I have never looked at the crafting cost and still profited every single time because of how time-gated concentration is. There hasn't been a time where it hasn't been worth it to do. And this is considering we are almost 3 months into the expansion, so that's probably most likely never going to happen just because of how time-gated concentration is. But let's get into some of the other ones. A 40 of the Depths is also really, really awesome, but I would say that this is an even more expensive pattern. So again, really awesome enchant, but you would start even deeper in the hole, so that's something that you would have to decide whether you want to do or not. Radiant Haste is also a really, really good enchant. You can see the region average daily sold is really, really nice as well here. Now, another one that I do is Defender's March. That's a great enchant as well. We also have Chant of Leeching Fangs. We have Chant of Winged Grace. Those are awesome. Then we also do Crystalline Radiance, which is a super great one as well. And there's a couple of other ones, but those are like the main ones that I would say that are really worth it to go for. It's smart to diversify as much as possible, because if you end up in a situation where you have one particular enchant and the profit margins changes a lot, or Blizzard makes a huge change to stat priorities or metas or whatever, making one enchant better than the other. If you have an entire alt army that's only good at making one, maybe two enchants, then you could run into troubles. So that's why it's really smart branching out and making as many as you feel like is needed. Even if the profit margins are not the same, and you might be losing out on some potential gold when you're looking at it. But obviously, that's a decision that you have to make for yourself. Again, this was a wild yapping session. I hope this makes sense. I wanted to go through this as much as possible so you guys get a more clear understanding of how I'm setting up my concentration alts. If you have any questions to any of the stuff that I said, or maybe the stuff that I didn't say, make sure that you drop that down in the comments below. Another really important thing, just make sure that you check your patron orders every single time when you're doing your crafting, again, because there's a lot of gold that people are missing when they're not doing their patron orders. So just make sure that you don't miss that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, if you have any questions to anything that I just said, make sure that you drop that down in the comments below. But I appreciate you guys watching all the way to this point in the video. If you did, make sure that you type "I want a bike" in the comments down below. And what I mean by that is I will be giving away one of the wonderful Mountain Dew, not really promotion, Mountain Dew, Rockstar, Doritos, whatever it is. I will be giving away one of these wonderful bikes. I have a code. I have a wonderful code that I'll be giving away to one of you guys. If you type "I want a bike" down in the comments below, then you are entered into the giveaway. I will probably be picking a winner a week after this particular video has been out. So if you are watching at a time that is later than a week after this video released, then you can no longer enter the giveaway. Just keep that in mind. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.